All right, welcome back to another episode of the Psychopedia podcast. I am your co-host, Hank Sinatra, here with my Megro Micro Soko co-host.
Investigator Slater.
No, you got to start it worse than that.
I didn't want to make you feel too bad.
Not possible. That was so bad. I don't know what the fuck that was.
Want to try it again?
No, I said Soko.
Maybe it's going to be a thing.
Like Southern Comfort?
Right.
It was the first thing I ever got drunk on.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
No. I don't want to be toxic.
No. Okay. Well, anyway, so I don't live like that anymore. But I did appear to be just a little bit inebriated right now when I couldn't get the word out. All right. So here's what's happening right now. We're coming off the tail end of part 1, which, as was revealed in the episode, is about Jack the Ripper.
Oh, yeah.
Jack the Ripper.
Remember motherfucking Ripper.
Do you remember Mac the Knife?
No.
He was like a moon-faced singer, but it wasn't real. It was like a drawing of Mac the Knife. Like Carmelo said, your face looks like a clock.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know why that just whatever. Anyway, Mac the Knife. Anybody over 40 will probably know what that is.
You got a couple of years on me.
You're on the cusp. Yeah, I have about a year and 3 months on you. 2 months.
That's it?
Yeah.
I thought it was like solid 2 years.
No.
Whatever, you're older than me.
Yeah, barely.
You're shorter than me.
Yeah, barely. So we're coming off that. We're going into part 2 where we're going to get into like the psychological aspect. The final victim we need to cover also.
Yes. Some conspiracy theories, potential
theories.
suspects.
What is the difference between a theory and a conspiracy theory?
Do you know what? It usually says conspiracy theory, but I made the distinction between theory and conspiracy theory because conspiracy theory for me is like tinfoil hat,
Rooted.
like so out there, like it's a bigger thing and it has to do with like taking over a country like crazy, whereas a theory is like, I just think this is what happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the
Conspiracy
level
theories.
of insanity.
The level of reach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I kind of make that distinction, whether there is one or not, I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get into that. Before we get into it, we're going to read some Patreon names.
I
Just
love
two.
I love
okay?
it.
We got to give these people their
Propers.
deserved propers and credit. Okay. So patreon.com/psychopediapod, where you go to get more of us. If you love us and you're not getting enough of us, there's a place for you to go. Call 911. They'll point you in the right direction. And you get a bonus episode, a bonus true crime episode. You get an extra Psychopedia, which is my version of a true crime episode, but it's almost like Unhinged. And then an episode a week of Unhinged where we revisit a case barely and talk about kind of whatever. It's just
everything.
A stream of thought, really.
Yeah.
Stream of consciousness.
It's always interesting, though, I got to say.
Yeah. So the 2 Patreon members I'm going to read off today. One of them, I think this is like you're right up your alley.
Oh, let's hear it.
Well, first we'll do the Rachel Whalen.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel Whalen. Love that last name. Taciturn Dullard.
You remember what case that's from?
I don't, but I remember the phrase.
That was referring to one of the, not accomplices. Oh, yeah, accomplices. One of the Snowtown murder accomplices, Mark.
Yes.
That's how he was described.
Yes, I do remember
being a
that.
Taciturn Dullard. So well done, Patreon member.
Better than a cackling dim-witted asshole.
It's not better. That's good too.
Oh, better? Did I say better?
You did.
They're both.
Picking your favorite kid. You can't do that.
Oh, I was thinking would you rather be shot or stabbed?
Oh, speaking my language.
Speaking of, before we dive into the case, would you rather be shot or stabbed?
Oh, shot. Are you kidding me?
Me too, yeah.
That's not even a question.
Yeah.
Who the hell would choose stabbed?
Well, stabbing, you're more likely to survive.
Oh, wait. I didn't realize that we're factoring in like the consequences of the actions. Like, where am I being stabbed? Where am I being shot? If that matters now, it has to be a discussion.
Yeah. I don't know.
For another time.
I think if death is the consequence, controlled for in both scenarios, shot.
Yeah, I'm pretty.
Obviously.
Okay.
Yeah. Just bazooka me in the head. RPG. Oh, thank God.
RPG?
Yeah, it's a thing that like the missile.
Oh.
They shoot. I just rewatched The Kingdom.
There you go.
So
there it is.
I would just be like, fucking take me.
We're so tired.
My head hurts.
I just
almost
wanted
constantly.
Yeah.
So without further dullardness. Without further taciturnity, not a word.
It is now.
It is now. Let's get into part 2 because I really, really, really want to know what happens.
I really, really, really want to tell you what happens.
Well, then very well.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to give a tiny itty bitty Slater-sized summary of what happened in part 1, but this is in no way a substitute for watching, listening to part 1, whether you're watching us on YouTube or you're listening on wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you are watching on YouTube, do your part, leave a heart. Okay, and if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, do what you do, leave a review.
Did you just come up with that?
I did.
Hove.
It's it. Yeah.
Excuse me. A little credit. Shut up. But the fact that I knew the symbol at all.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Diamonds are forever.
Yeah. So it's not this little summary is not a replacement for part 1. Please go listen to part 1. Please.
I do have a new shirt on, by the way.
So do I.
Yeah.
Because it's a new episode.
It's
not like we're recording it on the same day. We actually changed our outfits.
The last shirt I had on was take on the Sepultura Bloody Roots album cover, but it was Groot.
It was cute.
And then this one is my boy H. Foley from the Are You Garbage podcast.
Oh.
Of which, if you haven't listened to my episode on it, it's probably, besides this, my favorite podcast episode I've ever done in my entire life.
I like that you said besides this.
Yes.
All right. In part 1, we explored what Whitechapel, London was like in the 1880s and how the area's desperation created a perfect breeding ground for a depraved killer to strike.
Yes.
We discussed that as many as 11 murders could be linked to the unknown serial killer dubbed Jack the Ripper, but that 5 victims, known as the canonical 5, are definitely linked to this man.
Which, by the way, you're speaking my language with that 5.
Oh, yeah, I know it. These 5 victims are the focus of our 2-part coverage. Obviously, we could have gone on and talked about the other victims who were worthy of airtime as well. But for the purpose of our Ripper coverage, we're focusing on the canonical 5.
Sure.
In part 1, we detailed the brutal slayings of the Ripper's first 4 confirmed victims, Marianne Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, and Catherine Eddowes. We concluded part 1 by discussing a letter that was sent to a news agency allegedly penned by the killer himself. And he signed the letter as Jack the Ripper, giving the homicidal maniac a flashy name that would be forever remembered. So that is the seriously quick recap, but it will have to do because we have a lot to cover in part 2, which officially begins right now.
Well, when you say he was given the moniker.
Or in 20 seconds.
When you say he was given the moniker that would be remembered forever, you're not. I mean, that's not a joke. This is like everyone, I feel like, knows.
It's not
at
superlative.
Least the name Jack the Ripper. Yeah.
Okay, so part 2 begins now.
Okay.
Now. At first, investigators thought that the letter, which had become known as the Dear Boss letter, which I mentioned in part 1.
And I read.
And you did beautifully.
Thank you.
Was a hoax. They thought it was a hoax at first. And so for a bit, they sat on it. Because remember I said that the letter was received after victim number 2.
Yes.
And then we didn't really hear anything, right? And here we are now in part 2, and I'm first telling you about it. Because they sat on it for a little while. But then, on October 1st, Sir Charles Warren, who, if you remember, was the police commissioner, decided to share the letter with the public, which created seismic shockwaves everywhere.
Is this before or after the person was discovered with a mutilated ear?
After.
Okay, so the letter, he mentions something about, I'll next mutilate an ear, and then a woman was found with her nose cut off, put on her jaw, and her ear mutilated. So they were like, oh, it was real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The use of the name Jack the Ripper in the letter didn't just captivate the public's imagination, it cemented the killer's infamy for all time.
For sure.
The letter's release intensified public fear and led to a tremendously distracting influx of letters from people claiming to be Jack the Ripper, which complicated the investigation and added to the general chaos. The police had to bring in tons and tons of plainclothes officers from other districts to help patrol the area and keep order because now, more than ever, there was panic on the dance floor. But many historians today, and definitely plenty of skeptics back then too, doubt the legitimacy or authenticity of the letter still and feel that a journalist may have penned the letter and set the whole thing up.
See, I feel like Jack the Ripper is a marketing genius, as well as probably a great businessman, because in part 1, I posed the theory, which has never been posed before, that he was involved in these workhouses and was getting inside information about women that were coming to get a room and weren't able to because they didn't have the faux pence. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. So he may own a bunch of them and he's very savvy, but he's bored with bored with life and people in that area. I don't think it's possible to over exaggerate the destitution that was happening there.
I agree with that.
Like if you didn't listen to part 1, go back and listen to her description of it because it's tough.
Harrowing.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, many people think that the letter was made up by a journalist who just wanted to create a sensational story to run with. But then on October 16th, a man named George Lusk received a small box in the mail with another letter written in red ink, just like the first letter. George Lusk, by the way, was the president of the Mile End Vigilance Committee, the citizen vigilante group that I mentioned in part 1.
Which was brand new.
Brand new.
Okay.
Everything happened in such quick succession. So anything that happened was new. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the letter to George said this: Mr. Lusk, sir, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. The other piece I fried and ate it. Was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if you only wait a while longer. Signed, catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk.
Not Jack the Ripper.
Exactly. And the return address on that letter was From Hell, which is the Johnny Depp movie about Jack the Ripper. It's
really?
Called From Hell.
Yeah.
Yet, like other letters purportedly from Jack the Ripper, because there were some, the authenticity of this letter and even the accompanying body part continues to remain a subject of ongoing debate amongst historians and ripperologists. Did you want to say something?
I don't even know if I can get into it.
Just go, man.
Well, you mentioned Johnny Depp in the movie From Hell. Was that the name of it?
Yep.
So back when The Blueprint 3 came out, and I moved to California and made my friend Jay listen to it for 3 weeks, literally straight. There's a line on Run This Town Tonight where he says, this is when this movie was also out. He said, and our girls are blackbirds riding with their Dillingers. You can get more in depth if you boys really enough. But depth, Johnny. But there's another one. So Blackbird was a song written by Paul McCartney about the girl who led the integration not effort, but she was kind of like the head.
A pivotal player.
She was the first one, right?
Okay,
so he wrote a song about that girl, Blackbird, right? Beyonce later covered Blackbird because of the meaning behind the song, which was not well known.
Yeah.
But Jay-Z saying, and our girls are blackbirds, just hit me right now. I mean, it is 15 years later.
That's the best.
Oh, dude, Jay-Z is the best.
I mean,
fuck Kendrick, sorry.
He still has a chokehold on your heart.
Oh, he does, yeah.
All right, so for the rest of October, the killings stopped.
Ooh, very rare.
Until.
Okay.
Although rare and yes and no, because serial killers do have cooling off periods. But unfortunately, the other shoe did drop in the early hours of November 9th. Just after 2 a.m., 25-year-old Mary Jane Kelly, victim number 5 of the canonical 5, was approached by a man on Commercial Street. Mary Jane locked arms with this man, who she assumed would be her next paying client, and walked right past her friend George Hutchinson as she made her way back to her room on Miller Court. Okay. Hutchinson later claimed that the man on Mary Jane's arm stared at him in a, quote, sinister fashion as he walked by.
The man stared. Yeah.
Then, just before 4 a.m., some of Mary Jane's neighbors on Miller Court recalled hearing a soft cry from her bedroom, which they ignored because, sadly, hearing crying and yelling and fighting was not out of the ordinary in that area.
Yeah.
It wasn't until hours later at 10:45 a.m. when her landlord, John McCarthy, knocked on her door to collect rent. And that's when Mary Jane's completely brutalized corpse, or whatever was left of it, was discovered on her bed. The sight was absolutely horrifying, and by recounting what John found in Mary's room, you'll understand the full terror of what happened to this poor woman. According to John, quote, "The sight we saw, I cannot drive away from my mind. It looked more like the work of a devil than a man. The poor woman had been completely disemboweled and her entrails had been taken out and placed on the table.
Of course.
It was those that I had seen when I looked through the window and took to be lumps of flesh. The woman's nose had been cut off and her face gashed and mutilated so that she was quite beyond recognition. Both her breasts, too, had been cut clean away and placed by the side of her liver and other entrails on the table. I had heard a great deal about the Whitechapel murders, but I declare to God that I had never expected to see such a sight as this.
Yeah.
The body was, of course, covered with blood, and so was the bed. The whole scene is more than I can describe. I hope I may never see such a sight again.
Yeah.
End quote.
I'm going to interject for a second because you said that the fighting, screaming, yelling was not uncommon to be heard. And I said, of course. I just want to clarify why I said, of course.
Sure.
Do you know, have you heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yes.
Okay. So for those of you who haven't, it's a theory put forth. And at the bottom of it is like basic necessities, food, shelter, clothing. Above that is like, community, friendship. Above that is like intimacy and whatever. And then above that is self-actualization. The lower you are on that pyramid, the harder it is for you to manage your life, obviously, because your clear and present problems are survival. So like, think of how good you may have it right now and how hard it is for you to not engage with people in arguments, and then times that by 10,000.
Yeah.
Because these people are living in the worst conditions possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Mary Jane's remains were taken to the Shoreditch mortuary, where it was also discovered that her throat had been cut. Additionally, Mary Jane's heart had been removed and was nowhere to be found, having been presumably taken by the killer himself. Mary Jane Kelly was eventually laid to rest in an almond oak coffin at 12 p.m. on November 19th, 1888, following a funeral that took place at St. Leonard's Church in Shoreditch. Several thousand people attended Mary Jane's funeral and the burial, which took place at St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Cemetery in Layton. What no one realized at the time was that Mary Jane Kelly would become Jack the Ripper's final victim. At this stage in the case... She's already dead, but they didn't realize at the funeral that she was going to wind up being the last victim.
Yeah.
Which I guess is a good thing.
Yes, that's why I was like, wait, why did I say, oh? Oh, he's done killing.
At this stage in the case, after the tragic and outrageously horrific, brutal, and inhumane deaths of the canonical five, all the coroners from the various jurisdictions involved unanimously determined that they had been killed by the same depraved killer. That killer, of course, was the infamous Jack the Ripper.
Yes.
Now, the authorities were under immense pressure, obviously, to apprehend the Ripper, and three dramatic developments occurred at this point that collectively illustrated this intense pressure. One, Police Commissioner Sir Charles Warren resigned on the exact day on which Mary Jane Kelly was killed.
Well, yeah, I couldn't take it anymore.
His departure signaled a loss of confidence in the police force's ability to solve the case and heightened public anxiety. Apparently, he did try to resign like multiple times before and it never really happened. And then it finally went through and it happened to like really officially happen on that day.
Yeah.
But it's a little sketch.
Could be coincidence.
Could be. Two, Queen Victoria personally intervened with the investigation and urged Prime Minister Lord Salisbury to take decisive action. She advocated for better trained detectives and improved street lighting, reflecting the royals' concern over the competency of police. And three, the government intervened, finally, not by offering an award for information, which they were being pressured to do and just wouldn't, but by offering a free pardon to any accomplice of the murderer who would turn the actual murderer in.
Wow, that's a risky move,
It is.
as an accomplice.
Totally.
If there was one.
If there was one. Pop quiz.
Okay.
What happened as a result of these three significant developments? A, nothing. B, the U.S. learned of the seriousness of the case and had the FBI intervene. C, Scotland Yard collaborated with the fictional Sherlock Holmes in a publicity stunt to boost public morale.
A.
Yeah.
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 I don't think the FBI was formed until like...
No, I looked it up.
And what about Sherlock Holmes?
The prototype for the modern mastermind detective appeared in 1887. So that's
it was probably
what
Jack the Ripper
well,
with his deerstalker hat.
Right.
By the way, I can't be the only person who put a baseball hat on forwards and then one on backwards and pretended to be Sherlock Holmes. Can I?
I definitely did shit like that. Sherlock
did?
Holmes? Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You're not the only loser. Don't worry.
I mean, no, I'm not the only genius.
Excuse me, I misspoke. So nothing happened after those very 3 big important developments. And eventually, without any further killings, the world just continued to turn as it had before. People began to focus once again on daily survival in the slums and making enough money somehow to have a bed to sleep in.
Yeah.
The media moved on to other topics, and the terror that once gripped Whitechapel faded into the background.
That's good.
Life resumed its harsh rhythm, and the shadow of Jack the Ripper became just another dark chapter in the city's history. Yet, the question that still burns in the minds of ripperologists, true crime fanatics, really anyone who knows anything about killers in general, because like we've said 100 times, I don't think there's anybody more famous than Jack the Ripper.
Mm-hmm.
The question today is, who was Jack the Ripper? How and why did he select his victims? Was there a grander purpose? A message behind his killings, perhaps? Was he a madman driven by a personal vendetta or a calculated killer with a chilling agenda? Well, there are theories. 3 main ones that exist in the forefront of ripperology, as I see it, are the ones that we're going to dive into. And I'd be remiss not to discuss these 3, but I am well aware that there are a billion other conspiracy theories.
But these are like the ones that keep popping up.
These are the ones for me that I kept seeing pop up and that, I don't know, there's a little something to them.
Sure.
All right?
Sure there are.
Conspiracy theory number 1, Masonic/royal conspiracy theory.
Okay.
The deaths of at least some, if not all, of Canonical 5 were part of a sinister plot involving 3 specific men of the upper echelon: John Netley, Walter Sickert, and Sir William Gull.
Okay.
Meaning, Jack the Ripper, as a one-man entity, never existed.
Okay.
According to this theory, which is deeply discussed and supported by Stephen Knight in his bestseller, Jack the Ripper, The Final Solution, the murders were part of a Masonic conspiracy to protect Prince Albert Victor, Queen Victoria's grandson, from a scandal. And that scandal, although there is no concrete evidence to authenticate it, involved rumors and suspicions that Prince Albert Victor was a client at a male brothel on Cleveland Street in London. The scandal threatened the reputation of the British aristocracy and brought issues of homosexuality and morality into the public eye during a time when homosexuality was illegal and highly stigmatized.
It was illegal back then?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So in an effort to quash the rumors, a group of individuals, including John Netley, Walter Sickert, and Sir William Gull, conspired to murder sex workers who allegedly knew about Prince Albert Victor's indiscretions. Additionally, this theory posits that the killings were intended not just to silence the actual people who knew about what was going on, but to send a broader message to others who might have similar knowledge or inklings that if they open their mouths, they will be slaughtered.
It's also a very clear case of obfuscation.
What is that?
Meaning this story was getting some buzz before it hit the press, and to keep that from happening, they just started killing people to make that the big story.
Okay. So you may be asking, how is this a Masonic theory? Isn't it just a potential royal cover-up conspiracy theory? Well, it's both, or neither, depending on your position.
Okay.
But let me explain the Masonic connection as posited by this theory. So the supposed Masonic connections of Sir William Gull, who was the Queen's former physician, and possibly the other 2 alleged perpetrators as well, suggests that the Freemasons were involved in protecting the perpetrators due to their secretive and powerful network. And there were many supposed connections between the killings and certain Masonic rituals that form the basis of this conspiracy. I could do an entire episode on this alone, but I'm going to take my own liberty here and focus on the elements that I find most compelling.
Mm-hmm.
But for any ripperologist, I realize that there's a billion other points I could be raising. Here's my take on the theory involving the connections between Freemasons and the Jack the Ripper murders. 1, the graffiti message on the wall near where Catherine Eddowes' body was found with a piece of the bloody apron.
Okay.
If you recall, the message said, "The Jews, Juwes, are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Okay, here's the potential Masonic connection. In Freemasonry, the three Jews, which is JUWES, stand for, or shortened for, or whatever, Jubella, Jubello, and Jubellum. And they are three ruffians who are said to have murdered Hiram Abif, the architect of Solomon's temple, according to Masonic legend.
Oh, like a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And they symbolize treachery and violence.
Jubellum,
Jubello,
Jubello,
and Jubella.
Jubello, Jubella, Jubellum.
Yeah, the
But-
three Jews.
How would, okay. I'm not going to.
So, okay. So if the message, stay with me here. If the message, the Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing, is interpreted through a Masonic lens, it could be suggesting that the murderers, like those three ruffians, will escape blame or responsibility for their actions, implying a form of justice or vengeance that will go unpunished. Okay?
Yeah.
The phrase might also imply that, like the three Jews, JUWES, who were eventually caught and punished for their crime, the Ripper's actions are part of a larger hidden plan of justice or retribution that aligns with Masonic beliefs.
Okay.
In the 19th century, virtually everyone who was anyone was a Mason, including the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Charles Warren.
Yeah.
And remember how I mentioned that he erased the entire message almost immediately?
Yeah.
Even though the city police were arguing to not erase it at all, like to keep it, did he see the code in the graffiti, knew that the murderer or murderers were members of the Freemasons and removed it to protect them?
Wait, I'm sorry. So the Jubellum were active in the 1880s or like in 2,000 years ago?
Like exactly.
Okay. All right. And so the reason I brought up Jack the Ripper as a businessman before and owning all the whatever real estate is because I meant to say that he was probably obviously paying off whoever he could to do whatever he wanted to do, because to kill in that kind of an environment with that many people around,
you kind of feel like you need a level of protection. There has to be a level of protection, right?
Yeah.
So if this is the case too, then those three potential perpetrators, Sir William Gull and the other two that I mentioned, were Masons. And they were killing to protect the prince, and then they were being protected by the Freemasons.
or if it was one person, and money was probably very hard to come by back then, even for police officers. He was giving them a little extra to be like, listen, these people they're not even real. They're nothing people.
There it is. You actually found a way to work it in.
I did. They're not even supposed to be in the area. So then he was like, I'm just going to kill them and I'm going to give you
stooped them a little something.
10 shillings.
Right. I liked it better when you said faux pence.
Faux pence. I don't know what a shilling or a pence is.
Okay.
I don't care.
And I don't care.
Was it like cents and dollars? Is pence a cent and shillings a dollar?
I'll tell you what, you look into it.
And then don't even get me started on quid.
And you let us know.
Okay.
Two, in terms of the potential Masonic connection, the throat cutting and mutilations. So here's the potential Masonic connection. In Masonic initiation rituals, there are symbolic gestures related to the penalty for breaking Masonic oaths, which involve throat slitting, tongue torn out, heart removed, or body disembowelment.
Now I'm
Potential meaning, if the throat cutting, disembowelment, and removal of the heart, in Mary Kelly's case, in the Ripper murders, were interpreted through a Masonic lens, it could suggest that the victims were being punished for breaking some sort of oath or revealing secrets. Not that they were Masons, but you know what I mean? But the people exacting justice were using
Masonic
exactly
guidelines. So I guess, listen, the Masons, I'm sure, were the biggest clients of the sex workers. And they probably talk and,
Exactly. Additionally, the slashes on some of the women's faces have been interpreted by some as being Masonic symbols. Remember how I said they were like sort of like upside down triangles beneath the eyes, slashed into the skin? So, number 3, in terms of the Masonic connection, the brass rings being removed from Annie Chapman's fingers. Remember I mentioned that?
Yep.
Here's the potential Masonic connection. Brass is a sacred metal to Masons, particularly with the construction of King Solomon's temple, which holds a central place in Masonic tradition and ritual. Brass objects are often used in Masonic lodges and rituals. Also, before initiation, Masons are divested of all their brass, symbolizing the removal of material wealth and external status. And this act represents the idea that all men are equal within the lodge. Again, Annie Chapman had the contents of her pockets emptied and arranged at her feet in potentially some kind of ritualistic manner.
Yeah.
But more to the point, her brass rings were entirely missing.
Isn't the whole point of joining the Freemasons is for material wealth and power and status?
I think it's probably what you gain in that vein once you become a Mason.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I'm not a Mason.
Yeah.
But let me just tell you what the potential meaning, obviously, I mean, it's pretty clear. But this theory suggests that the murders were either committed or covered up by individuals with Masonic affiliations to protect the monarchy and other high-profile individuals.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, the last potential Masonic connection, and this is simple, but evasion of capture. The influence and network of the Freemasons are often cited as reasons why the killer was never caught.
Yeah.
The idea is that Masonic connections within the police and judiciary arena helped to shield the killer from capture and prosecution.
You got to let the cops and the judges into the Freemasons if you're going to be doing shady shit.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, why would the killer bother implementing all these signs and rituals? Well, arguably, he knew that if the police saw signs of Freemasonry at the scene, then he'd be immune. So he scattered Masonic symbolism around his victims like confetti, knowing that he was essentially placing a giant shield around himself.
He was like, no. I have a PBA card. Thank you very
like
much.
The Salt Bay, but
let me go. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so that's all I'm giving you on conspiracy theory number 1.
Okay.
All right, because we got to keep moving.
Yeah. I can't believe that was one conspiracy theory.
You're good. You're doing good.
I'm doing great.
Conspiracy theory number 2, the Jill the Ripper theory.
Oh, you love that, huh?
This theory posits that Jack the Ripper was actually a woman, often referred to as Jill the Ripper. And the rationale behind this theory includes a female murderer would have been able to move about more freely and attract less suspicion, especially in the company of other women. 2, according to this theory, Jill the Ripper may have been a midwife who would have had the anatomical knowledge to perform the mutilations and a reason to be covered in blood without drawing suspicion. Because to your multiple points, how in these packed, dense areas was somebody able to commit these atrocities and just presumably freely roam?
Yeah.
3, if Jill had indeed been a midwife, she may have been performing backstreet abortions.
Oh.
This could be the reason why Mary Kelly's clothes were found neatly folded on a chair not too far from her corpse. So she was the only one who was like completely disrobed, and her clothing, because she was murdered in her apartment, were folded. Perhaps she undressed willingly as part of a medical abortion procedure, only to be preyed upon. Now, in terms of a suspect under this theory, a woman named Mary Percy is often cited as being a potential suspect, as she was convicted of a similarly brutal murder around the same time.
Oh.
She killed her lover's wife, Phoebe Hogg, and their infant child, Piggy Hogg, using blunt force trauma and slashing their throats. She was arrested in 1890, which also may explain why the murders suddenly stopped. Now, they stopped well before then, but...
Yeah.
Pop quiz.
Okay.
My good sir, what percentage of the victims of female serial killers are female? A, 10 to 20.
Okay.
B, 30 to 40. C, 50 to 60.
30 to 40?
Yes. I mean, you are crushing it.
I am answering based on my divine instinct here. I'm just letting the answer
Get it, Hove.
itself to me.
You know?
Leave the door open, let God in.
We found you a nice soft place to land.
Wrap your ass off.
And it's going to happen. Now, while we're on the topic of naming possible suspects, all right, I'm going to take like a tiny little detour from our conspiracy theory discussion, slight, because I want to throw out 2 more additional names in the way of suspects. Keep in mind, there are approximately 20 to 25 primary suspects who have received significant attention in the Jack the Ripper, the case.
Females or males
Mix.
or both?
Okay. Males, mostly males.
Okay.
However, the total number of individuals suggested as suspects over the year exceeds 100. And I ain't dragging you down that road.
Yeah,
we're on a tiny little detour.
Thank you.
This extensive list includes individuals with varying degrees of credibility and connection to the case. I'm not able to run you through 100 or even the 25. But in addition to Mary Percy, I will throw out 3 more suspects cited in the Jack the Ripper case based on historical investigation, contemporary police suspicions, and modern analysis.
Okay.
1, Montague John Druitt.
Wow.
Montague John Druitt was an Oxford-educated man from a decent family, although some believe that he was, quote-unquote, sexually insane. He worked as a barrister and supplemented his income at the bar by working as an assistant schoolmaster at a boarding school in Blackheath, southeast London. Many experts believe Druitt was behind the murders, as they are convinced that Jack the Ripper was a Whitechapel local, and Druitt resided just a few miles away on the other side of the Thames. Additionally, he was also seen in the Whitechapel area around the time of the Jack the Ripper murders. And then on November 9th, 1888, just 7 weeks after the murder of Mary Jane Kelly, who was the last of the canonical 5, Druitt's body was found floating in the Thames. Investigators believe that the cause of death was suicide and that he had been at the bottom of the river for several weeks around the time of Mary Jane Kelly's murder.
Okay.
So here's somebody who is considered sexually insane, an educated man.
He's out of his mind with sex stuff. I mean, good guy, but really.
Oxford educated, so he could have been studying anatomy.
Yeah.
All right. Lived in the area and presumably killed himself after Mary Jane Kelly. And then after she died, there were no other victims because it's when he died.
Oh.
If he's the guy.
Yes.
Okay. Suspect number 2 or 3, if we're counting Jill the Ripper, Aaron Kosminski. Aaron Kosminski was a Polish-Jewish immigrant who lived in Whitechapel and worked as a barber and was known to have severe mental health issues. In fact, he was eventually committed to an asylum. Several highly esteemed police officers believed that Aaron Kosminski was behind the Jack the Ripper murders based on his very strong hatred of women and the fact that he displayed homicidal tendencies, which likely is why he wound up in a mental health facility. Also, interestingly, although this is disputed, but like everything else, everything is disputed in this case because we don't actually know who did it.
It's 150 years ago.
Modern mitochondrial DNA analysis on a shawl purportedly found on Catherine Ito links Kosminski. Did I say it wrong? Because you had a little smile.
No, I'm just thinking about like the reliability of mitochondrial DNA analysis on a garment that's 150 years old.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't get me going.
Okay. Not impressed. No. Got it.
Tell me when you got something real.
Suspect number 3 or 4. Some sources say, I didn't tell you his name, Francis Tombletti.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like the guy.
Some sources say that he was born in Ireland, while others suggest that he was actually born in Canada. Whatever. What we do know is that he moved to Rochester, New York with his family within the first decade or so of his life. As a young adult, he gained employment working at a drugstore and was apprenticed to a doctor there. He also earned additional money peddling pornographic content on the nearby canal.
Little side hustle. This guy had an OnlyFans business back in...
He did.
Yeah.
And apprenticed with a doctor. So we have anatomical knowledge and a liking to porn, which was like a much bigger deal then than it is today.
Yeah. Well, I've told you about the link back to pornography.
Yeah.
Before, yeah. I think it was Ted Bundy who interviewed... Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer interviewed...
I think it was Bundy.
Bunch of serial killers in prison, and he like every single one of them had roots that trace back to early exposure to porn.
Right.
Yeah.
Destructive.
Yeah.
Throughout his travels, Francis posed as a doctor under the alias Dr. Blackburn and claimed to have secret knowledge of mystical cures and medicines from India. But historical research refers to him as a quack, so that's highly unlikely.
Yeah. And not just, listen, the porn thing is, you said it was destructive. That's not like a moral judgment.
No,
it's more
my
like
God.
It just is destructive.
Well, it's also, they were exposed to pornography at very, very young ages and like got into like brutal pornography.
Well, if you start that young and it's progressive, you're going to be, 15, 20 years ahead, somebody who discovers it at 20 and maybe is...
Right. Okay. So he's a quack, this guy Francis, okay?
Yeah.
That said...
Francis Tombletti?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was arrested in Canada twice, once for performing illegal abortions. So we got to think for, He knows lady bits.
Yeah.
Then again, for the sudden and highly suspicious death of a patient. In 1865, while living in Missouri under the fake name, again, Dr. Blackburn, it backfired on him using that name. For which of the following reasons?
PQ.
PQ. Why did using the name Dr. Blackburn backfire on Francis?
Blackburn singing in the dead of night.
A. He was confused with the notorious blackmailer who had targeted high-ranking officials in the U.S., resulting in a swift police investigation.
Okay, so he's using her name.
B. The actual Dr. Blackburn was a well-known revolutionary wanted for plotting against the British government, which got him extradited. C. He was mistakenly taken for the real Dr. Blackburn, who was someone wanted by police in connection with the murder of Abraham Lincoln.
Whoa, Blackburn extradited or Abraham Lincoln. Wow. I'm sorry, blackmail.
Yeah, I got it.
Extradited or Abraham Lincoln.
Great memory.
Oh, fuck. B feels right.
It's wrong.
Yeah, well, the feelings aren't facts, okay? C?
Yes!
That's a crazy
Come on,
one.
that's insane. I had to put that in.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I was like blown away. Little bits of information like this, I get hung up on.
He was wanted in conjunction
He
with
used the name Dr. Blackburn, and Dr. Blackburn was somebody wanted by police in connection with the murder of Abraham Lincoln. And this putz uses Dr. Blackburn as his alias. So now he's being pursued.
Wow.
I mean, you can't make it up.
And he's a doctor?
No, he was apprenticing with a doctor. Remember, he was a quack.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Francis Tombletti, Dr. Blackburn,
Yes.
Abraham Lincoln.
Sometime after that, Francis was known to be living in London by the summer of 1888. And due to the timing and his seedy way of life, he was placed under investigation for being Jack the Ripper.
Okay.
Interestingly, at the time, there had been rumors that an American doctor had approached the London Pathology Museum in an attempt to purchase the uteruses of deceased women. Could this have been Francis Tombletti?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be fucking anybody.
Eventually, Tombletti was arrested for having homosexual relations in 1888, which was illegal at the time, as I mentioned. He wound up skipping bail, fled London, and basically disappeared in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Well, it did strike me as odd that you were talking about him being in the U.S. and Missouri and wherever.
Brought it back.
Yeah.
Circled back, if you will.
You did circle it back.
All right. So 100 suspects. Those are the ones I cherry picked.
Okay.
And that was part of conspiracy theory number 2. And now we're going to go finish up here with conspiracy theory number 3.
The last one.
Yes.
The final frontier.
Jack the Ripper and prolific American serial killer H.H. Holmes were one and the same.
All right. Yeah, he's playing an away game.
H.H. Holmes is known as one of America's first serial killers, infamous for his horrific murder castle in Chicago during the 1893 World's Fair. We're definitely going to be covering him at some point.
Okay.
Here are the key points of this theory. 1, there is an overlap in the timelines of the Jack the Ripper murders and H.H. Holmes's activities. So Holmes could have traveled to London during the time of the Ripper murders and returned back to the U.S. afterwards.
Yeah.
Both Jack the Ripper, this is number 2, and H.H. Holmes exhibited knowledge of anatomy. Also, Holmes attended medical school and was known to dismember his victims. Number 3, both killers displayed traits associated with psychopathy, such as charm, manipulation, and a complete lack of empathy for their victims. This is obviously based on profiling of who we believe Jack the Ripper was.
Yes.
The theories are endless. That's it for conspiracy 3.
Okay. Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Wow.
But the bottom line remains that more than a century later, the identity of the murderer behind the canonical 5 remains shrouded in mystery. Okay, before we conclude, let's move on to the fun stuff and apply modern day techniques to fill in many of the blanks that remain outstanding since 1888.
Mitochondrial blanks.
Right. A psychological profile of Jack the Ripper based on modern criminological and psychological theories obviously aims to understand his behaviors, motivations, and characteristics.
Yes.
And while the identity of Jack the Ripper remains unknown, profilers have still been able to construct profiles based on the nature of the crimes and historical context. Interestingly, many experts credit the investigation of Jack the Ripper with starting the criminal profiling field, as the surgeon who assisted in several victims' autopsies, Dr. Thomas Bond, provided police not only with physical details of the crime, but also with psychological characteristics that he believed to be associated with the manner of the killings. So I thought that was interesting, that like this case, and many people believe, launched profiling. In any event, here is the first ever profile of Jack the Ripper that was conducted in America by FBI profilers John Douglas and Roy Hazelwood. The Ripper did not kill for the purposes of torture, money, or any financial gain. His methods suggest that he killed quickly and that the mutilation of the body was the key driving force behind the murder. Meaning what, Tank?
He was a product killer.
Very, very, very good.
Yeah.
Amazing. Oh, pop quiz.
Wow, that surprised you.
You did. It's a true or false.
Okay.
True or false? Jack the Ripper fits the clinical definition of a sadist.
False.
False. Can you say it like Dwight Schrute? Because he goes, false.
False.
Very good.
Yeah.
Jack was not a traditional sadist in the sense that his infliction of pain was giving him pleasure. And we know this because he strangled his victims first and then, after death, performed his ritual of mutilation. This suggests a killer who wants to dominate his victim with power and sexual violence. His actions show a deep resentment towards his victim where he must destroy who they are, as once passed out and on the ground, the slaughter would end, but the mutilation would begin. In that vein, perhaps he was a mission-oriented killer as well, intent on eliminating a particular group of people, in this case, sex workers, whom he perceived as undesirable or unworthy. In 1888, this kind of killer would have been completely unknown to most police forces in the world, as the idea of profiling began to take shape really in the latter half of the 20th century, particularly through the work of the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit, which later became the Behavioral Analysis Unit. The Ripper may also have been of respectable, if not appealing, appearance, and he possibly possessed a disarming charm like other serial killers, such as Ted Bundy, who could easily put victims at ease and off guard.
Plus, under the guise of, paying for sex.
Exactly.
It's like...
That comes up here. It is highly likely that Jack had attacked other women in the Whitechapel area prior to committing the first murder, which were either unreported or simply not linked to Ripper by the police.
Okay.
He likely would have waited for his unknowing victim to make the first move. As sex workers, it was sort of a job requirement, if you will, to approach potential clients, making them the ideal prey for a predator like Jack. Although he did not have sex with his victims, the attacks do have strong sexual suggestions, as his initial attack focused mostly on the genital region of the body. And it's possible, just knowing this, that the killer was impotent, or, in an ironic twist, that he feared women. By desexing his victims, he was removing their power to scare him. If this was the case, then he may have been seeking revenge on a dominant female figure in his life, likely a mother who abused him mentally, physically, and or sexually in his youth.
Yeah.
As he grew older, all women would come to represent his mother.
Of course, yeah.
It's also entirely possible that she too may have been a sex worker.
His mother?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why he perhaps targeted sex workers.
Yeah.
Now, taking the original police reports and medical evidence, Douglas and Hazelwood compiled a list of 11 character traits that Jack the Ripper would have had. I'm just going to read the list.
Okay.
1, he would have been a white male. 2, he would have been between 25 and 35 years old. 3, he would have lived locally to the Whitechapel/Spitalfields area. 4, he was a loner, most likely unmarried. 5, as a child, he would have had an absent father and a dominant mother. 6, he would have had a mental or physical disability or deformity, which made him feel different from others. 7, he would have worked a solitary job, which kept him away from social situations and regular interactions. 8, he would have been seen as quiet, shy, and a bit odd to those who knew him. 9, he'd have a deep-seated hidden aggression that would explode during bouts of low self-esteem, and there were only 10, I just messed up my numbers, and 10, he would lack guilt or remorse and would have even felt that his crimes were justified.
Number 9 was a little scary.
Well, my numbers are off, so which one was that?
Bouts of anger and rage during periods of feeling low self-esteem.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know why. I mean,
Well, because it's a little relatable.
not to me.
Just kidding. I don't know to who.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you don't feel good about yourself,
Mhm.
you want other people to not feel good.
Yeah. And you do. You have outbursts and you lash out.
And by the way, this isn't a Tank's tidbit, but the saying "misery loves company," joy loves company too. So stop saying just misery loves company.
I like
please.
that a lot.
Yeah.
I like that more.
Yeah, it's better, way better.
So one of the questions I was left with at the end of this case was, why did he stop? Why was Mary Jane Kelly, the fifth and final victim, if all signs pointed to the fact that he was only continuing to escalate, especially since mutilation killers rarely stop unless they get caught or they're close to getting caught? So really, maybe that's the answer. Maybe he felt he was getting too close to getting caught, or perhaps he was caught by family or a member of the Freemasons who had him committed or something like that to protect the organization.
So you're saying it wasn't escalating anymore, or it was?
It was, and then it just stopped. And it's uncharacteristic for a mutilation killer to just stop unless they're caught.
But the second one was worse than the first one. The third was not because it was taken out on the fourth. What was the fifth worse than the fourth?
The fourth one was the face mutilation.
The fifth one or the fourth?
The fourth.
Okay.
And then the fifth was beyond. She was in her apartment, which is an escalation in and of itself.
Yeah.
And her heart was missing and her organs were on the table.
Yes. Okay.
The Jack the Ripper case, steeped in the fog of Victorian London and shrouded in mystery, remains one of history's most chilling and unsolved crimes.
Yeah.
As we reflect on the brutal murders of Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Edos, and Mary Jane Kelly, we are reminded of the vulnerability and fragility of human life. Beyond the gruesome details, the case serves as a somber reflection on the intersection of poverty, neglect, and violence that plagues the East End of London and beckons us to remember the victims not just as names in a ledger of death, but as women who lived and struggled in a world that failed to protect them.
Yeah.
In remembering Jack the Ripper, we must also commit to building a society where such horrors are not just rare, but eradicated through empathy, vigilance, and the unwavering pursuit of justice.
I like eradicated.
Yeah.
Not just rare.
That is the 2-part coverage of Jack the Ripper.
Wow, very good. I know a lot about Jack the Ripper now.
Cool.
Not as much as you, but...
Well, I don't know about that because...
Well, there was stuff that you left out.
Yeah, I had to, or we'd be here for like 3 weeks straight.
You couldn't do that.
Don't say it unless you mean it.
I mean it, big time. Just kidding.
Okay.
No, I mean for another case. Now,
okay.
I don't want to hear it another second about Jack the Ripper. But
Got it.
Yeah, very good. Excellent work.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing all that heavy lifting.
I feel like we've done many serial killers, obviously, but this is like, a fixture. This is like somehow on a different level.
For some reason.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't think he was that bad.
Oh.
5 or 11, like Robert Picton killed 49 women.
Yeah, I can see where you're saying that.
I think the allure comes from the fact that it was never...
He was never found, and he had this fancy phrase, this fancy moniker.
Jack the Ripper.
You get what I'm saying?
He had this fancy freeway about him.
Also, all the conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And the deaths were absolutely brutal.
Terrible and very close together. And then they just stopped.
And found by people.
Which is very rare, like you said.
Yeah.
I feel like, he's the GOAT, I guess, because, and I hate that sounds positive, but I think the reason his name rings out so, far and wide is because of 2 things. 1, he was never found out. 2, he stopped. Like, I'm about to make the dumbest comparison. Like Seinfeld took a show off the air when it was at number 1.
Yeah.
That is so rare is not even the word. It's
right.
Like,
he left on top.
Nobody leaves on top.
Right.
He left on. I'm not saying Jack the Ripper's on top. What I'm saying is he was either able to stop or, like you said, he was killed or killed himself or
got locked
whatever.
up or got caught or
the
got
fact
silenced.
That we don't know is it leaves rooms for all kind of making, stuff.
Yeah.
Being
all these theories and stuff. Yeah. It's wild. I can't believe we did Jack the Ripper, though.
Me either.
I'm so happy about that.
Me too.
Do you have a tidbit?
I do have a tidbit. A Tank's tidbit. Tank's titties. You're calling them tidbits now, which I don't understand.
I don't know. I don't know why I'm so formal.
Yeah.
I prefer that you just show us your titties.
I saw something the other day on the internet about a girl saying that she didn't like the way she looked in pictures. She didn't think she looked pretty in pictures. She thinks she looks fine in real life, but she doesn't look great in pictures to her.
Okay.
This person wrote this comment. I mean, it was fucking powerful. They basically likened her dilemma to seeing a sunset or seeing the moon and trying to take a picture of it and not being able to capture all the beauty of it. Oh my God.
I'm never going to hate a picture again, I feel like.
Yeah, because a camera doesn't capture who you are. It doesn't capture your essence or your...
That's where the beauty is.
Yeah, for real. And which is funny because, I got married before the whole Tinder, Hinge, Bumble craze. But I did a little Match.com, and I remember meeting a girl on Match or from Match, and pictures looked good. She looked pretty, whatever. And when I met her in real life, it was definitely the same girl, but it wasn't. Also, it was like, oh no, I don't.
Oh, that I feel like that happens more frequently, where you see a picture, and you're impressed, or it jives with you, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And then they present in such a shitty way that any beauty you saw is gone.
But I've seen people who don't look
And
great in
reverse.
pictures and look way better in real life.
Well, that's just it. Exactly. It can go both ways, is my point.
Yeah, which just leads me to believe even more in like the spirit of somebody, that you can pick up on it or tune into it or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
It's not all about the way you look.
Agreed.
In a 2D format.
Agreed. Completely. I really, really do agree with that.
Yeah. So don't be so hard on yourself if you don't like the way you look in pictures. You are a sunset.
You are. And unique and beautiful.
Yeah.
And cherished and valuable.
100%.
So, beautiful tidbit.
Not going to dispute that. Thank you very much. Wouldn't look great in a picture, but it was good in real life.
Exactly.
All right. So I guess we'll leave them off with that.
Yeah.
I want to thank you guys for listening. Thank you for doing all the work.
My pleasure. Thank you for being a great co-host with tremendous insight per usual.
Thank you very much.
It is such a goddamn pleasure doing this podcast with you.
Yeah, me too.
And what you bring to the table.
Yes. Literally. I have it on the table.
You're at the table. Yes, you are.
So thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys at the next episode.
Thanks for listening. Bye.